Paris Agreement is the first global agreement we really have in climate change. So this is, I think, a big step forward that the whole, all the nations actually agreed on reaching a target well below 2 degrees. On the other hand, it left open many questions on implementation. How is this 2 degrees target or even 1.5 degrees really achieved by the different states? They are now putting forward nationally determined actions. It's the question whether these are really sufficient to achieve the targets that were set up by the Paris Agreement, and we don't still know how this will all play out. The Paris Agreement has as well asked for different trajectories that developing and emerging economies actually can still increase their emission while the industrialized countries should reduce the emissions. I think this is a problem because what we would like to have is more reduction in emerging economies and a compensation that they can really pay for this transformation of their economies, and this financial support, this technology support has to come from industrialized countries. There is nothing said about this really in the Paris Agreement, and so there are in the implementation of the agreement very many open questions, and you can still be skeptical whether, given this framework, the targets can really be achieved. I think this is possible, and in order to do so, I think we have to rely on market-based economic instruments. If we use the right instruments, I think it is possible to achieve our climate policy targets with costs that are still affordable for the European economies. But we see another discussion at the moment. We see another trend in the political circles. More and more specific policies, technology policies, command and control policies are implemented to achieve these climate policy targets, and these new policies in Germany alone, we have initiated more than 200 initiatives for the energy transition. These new policies are likely to increase the cost of achieving our targets. It would be better to resort to a common carbon price. We know from economics that this is the most cost-efficient way to do that. Put a strong price on carbon, let's say, for example, something between 20 or 30 euro per ton of carbon, and then take away many of these other subsidy schemes and policies that we have implemented in the meantime in order to keep, as you said, an economic perspective for this transformation. I think that's important, and the last thing you should consider is some of the industries will not be able to cope with these prices, especially if they are in international competition. So you would have to implement as well some special clauses for them, but that is only a very small fraction of industries that has to be treated differently at the moment. I think we give too many exemptions, and we give too many support for many of these activities. A common carbon price would be preferable. The household costs are driven mainly in the electricity sector by two developments. The one is the support for renewables. We have a feed-in tariff system for renewables that distributes a total support for renewables of more than 20 billion euro per year. That's a big part of the additional cost that we are facing. And the second cost driver is the development of the grid in Germany, which is as well necessary for our new generation structure. Both things are going to be more important in the future. We will see higher costs in the future, and so it's really important to think about how we can manage the increase in renewables with a new support scheme, and how we can align renewable support with the grid development in Germany, and how can we do that with least costs. And that is, I think, the main policy question that we are facing. The German government is now experimenting with a bidding system for renewables, and they want to implement this bidding system in probably next year. I think this is probably not helping us in this discussion about economic costs, because it's ignoring three impacts. The one, it's still technology specific. If we want to keep down the costs, we should resort to the lowest cost renewable technology. Now in the bidding system, the technologies are selected by policymakers, not by the market. So we should move into a more technology neutral support and environment in the future. The other thing is the regional incentives. Bidding systems do not differentiate between regions. So you will see a lot of bidding happening where generation costs are lowest. That's in Germany, in the north. And since it's in the north, we need a lot of transmission to the south, because there is the demand for electricity. So this can as well not be addressed by this bidding system. And then we need something that is taking into account as well grid congestion. That is important for the future. So we as well have to give incentives for new installations, for new investments, for operation of renewables and conventional power plants in the south, where the demand is actually highest. So the renewable reform has to be accompanied as well by a consideration about congestion pricing in the grid. And if we take these points together, I think we can implement our renewable targets much more efficiently and save a lot of money, and that of course will help households and industry in Germany.